welcome to the Off Market Mindset. My name is Michael Riordan, and I'm joined here with Jose Cortes. He is a transactional lender as well as a creative investor. And what he focuses on is short-term, long-term, and mid-term rentals on side of his lending business. Now, he's in the Colorado area, but he also invests around the country. So if you guys have any good deals that you want to throw his way, we'll have his contact info in the description below. But I know there's probably some things that I could have added to that, Jose. So if I missed anything that you want the audience to know, what are some things that you'd like to get out there for them?
Yeah, well, thanks again for having me on. One thing I think if I'm getting old, I'm also a DSCR lender. So you have investors that are watching this that may be looking for a DSCR lender. I'm a broker for about 22 lenders, so that I can help them find a program that will fit their needs. Prime example is I have a lender right now that let's say you have a low credit score. It's hard to get into deals. If you can find a seller that's willing to do a seller carryback, they'll do a 90% seller carryback
Oh,
on a loan. So that's very enticing, and just being able to find the right seller that's willing to do that. And then again, you mentioned that I'm a short-term, long-term, mid-term rental holder, but right now I'm focusing on co-living. I think it's the best thing to provide affordable housing for people, as well as make a little bit of a profit for myself.
oh yeah, of course. Now, let me ask you something. For anybody just getting into real estate investing, one of the big misconceptions and something that I, thought was you have to come into the game with your own money, right? But from what you're saying is if you can find the right seller, which in this case is like a seller carryback, they can get up to 90% loaned. Now, I know that there's also other lending out there where people actually bring in the existing or the remaining loan amount, or like let's say like uh, my brain is not working right now, the EMD, right?
Right.
Like, do you do other types of loans as well where you can fulfill all the different avenues, or do you have connections to that type of lending as well?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I'm a transactional funder, so I do the earnest money deposits, the double closes, and then what we call the stack method, where you have a seller carryback. I also have relationships with private money lenders that do help with gap funding. What is gap funding? Gap funding is usually the difference between what you can get a hard money lender for, and let's say you need money for um, carrying costs or for um, carrying costs. Let's say for appraisals, right? Just get into the deal for down payment assistance, that kind of stuff. You can get a gap lender to cover all that instead of doing E&D transactional funding if you're going to be the end buyer.
Mhm.
E&D transactional funding is typically for wholesalers that are just going to get into the deal and then get right back out. Where gap funding usually is trying to help somebody stay in the deal throughout the duration of the transaction, so that they can either fix and flip it or refinance it to buy and hold.
Got it. That's awesome, man. It definitely brings a lot of value because at the end of the day, being able to distinguish the differences is going to be important, right? Um, Let me ask you this. Which one did you get started in? Were you an investor first and then became a lender, or did you start lending and then investing? Just in case there's anyone in a, similar situation.
No, so I started off like most people in wholesaling,
Mhm.
and kind of just progressed from there. Went wholesaling, fix and flips, then to a buy and hold investor. Lending is something that just happened within the past year. I just realized that I was tired of trying to find the money uh, to close the deals that I was trying to do, and then I was like, you know what? I know that I'm not the only investor out there that is having problems finding money. So I was like, well, how about I be the answer to that problem, right? So
Mhm.
I started developing relationships with lenders. I would, whether they be institutional or a private money lender. So that way, when I have people that know that I'm a lender come to me and say, hey, this is the situation that I'm trying to solve,
Hmm.
I can reach out to my different resources to solve that problem for them. So I like to consider myself a problem solver because I couldn't do it for myself for years. And like I said, within the past year, starting to work and help people, more investors, close more deals.
Nice, man. Yeah, and it actually provides a lot of value because at the end of the day, now you're a one-stop shop. And I always say it's, nice to learn from your experience, but it's also better to learn from other people's experiences. So the fact that you were able to take the challenges that you had and turn them into strengths, it, really shows the type of person that you are, and that's what it takes to be a real entrepreneur, is not just look at the problem, but also look for the solution to the problem, right?
Absolutely.
So, and I guess like kind of touching on that, like what makes you that way? Like instead of being that person that just says, "Oh, I have these problems," like what do you think maybe was it something where growing up, did you have a good example? Like,
Well, I'll share this with the audience. I'm a 22-year retired Air Force veteran, and there are times when I was out in the field and maybe we're missing a part or we needed something that we didn't have. So you got to kind of get creative to solve the problem, right? With limited resources. So I take that experience and apply it to real estate. So
mhm,
what's the problem? Problem is I don't have the money, or I don't have a lot of money to close a deal. What's my resource? Okay, network. Network with people, find the people who have the money that can help me close these deals. So
mhm,
I kind of just took what I learned in the military, applied it to this entrepreneurship of real estate investing, and it has served me well so far.
yeah.
Um, you know, people always say use other people's money, and I kept hearing it, but I never really applied it. Now I'm actually applying the concept, and it's working really well.
Nice, man. Yeah, I actually I just did a podcast episode, and when I was doing it, there was a really great saying that I heard, and I think Reed. So he said it's the who, not the how, right? So,
Exactly.
and I like the fact that you had mentioned like the network, because like anybody that sees that episode and then they watch yours, it really just goes to show, we were talking about the community, right? And how we all have the same type of mindset, and it really like cements that in, because I mean, you didn't talk to Reed before this, right?
Nope.
Hey, you didn't watch
I
the
mean, I've
podcast.
talked to him, but not about this topic.
Exactly, right? So
Yeah.
um that just really like stands out so much. And um what would you say, like from networking, right? What has been the most value that you've been able to get out of networking?
Well, just to help other people, you know. So I had a New Year's resolution that I was going to try to attend or go to as many meetups as I possibly can, so I can meet new people inside and outside my network. And when I mean inside and outside, you and I belong to Pace Morby's group. So I'm a sub two person. I'm a Gator person. I'm actually a top tier TC and owners club. So I have four communities that I can pull resources from.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of investors here in the Colorado area that don't belong to those groups, and sometimes it's better to go outside your group to find other resources. I mean, you go to the same pool and you start going fishing the same pool, right? Things start to get tapped out, I guess is the best way of putting it. So,
Hmm.
um, by now going outside my communities, I'm able to find other sources of income to bring into our community to close deals. Um, Bring other opportunities or help other investors that I may not normally get in contact with to close their deals. So here's a prime example. Met I'll say a young lady at a meetup. She's a DSCR lender, but she only represents one lender, where I have 22. So she just reached out to me this morning and said, "Hey, do you have a lender that'll do co-living?" I said, "Actually, I have a couple that will do it. I'm gonna send this person to you." So now I'm helping somebody who I don't even know
Hmm.
be able to potentially get the funding they need to close a deal so that they can, invest, close their deal, and start making some money. All from networking. And that's why I feel that networking is the best tool when you're, especially a real estate investor, because you never know who can be a resource for you in what manner, whether it be leads, whether it be funding, whether it be opportunities to partner with them. You just never know.
Yeah. The great thing about that too, if you really pay attention to, what you just said, you just increased her value so much by giving her access to 22 lenders just
Yep.
for one conversation, right? Like
Yep.
that's crazy. And if you didn't take the time to network, you wouldn't have been able to provide that value to her.
Right.
Hopefully she takes that and she does the same for others. And the great thing is the law of reciprocity, right? So you helped her, she gets a deal funded, she finds other people in the same situation, and now she comes to you because you provided her with value with more deals. So now you guys are just making money together, which is really awesome. Um, you had mentioned sub two and stuff like that. So I do want to bring that up. Like, how did you come in into the sub two environment? And then it sounds like you're in every single program that PACE offers. So, um, like,
Yeah.
what made you decide to, go into the other aspects of, the creative space as well? Because obviously you have the investing, and then,
Sure.
we're both an owners club, which is the highest level you can get. And then you've got top tier TC, Gator lending, like kind of explain the spider web there.
So I mentioned that I started investing back in 2016. Well, back in 2021, I invested in a couple of mentorships, multifamily and investing out of state type of mentorship. And in 2022, it was August of 2022. I'm actually sitting in my living room watching movies, and one of my mentors would say, what are you doing? How's this activity making you money, or how are you going to monetize what you're doing right now? And I started thinking about that as I'm sitting there watching, a Netflix movie, and I'm like, this is not income producing activity.
Yeah.
I basically stopped, turned off the movie, started going to YouTube University, trying to find some more. I said, if I'm going to sit here and watch TV, I might as well educate myself, where most people do that. They just keep soaking in information. And I just typed in real estate. And when I did that, Pace Morby's stuff started coming up, and I started watching him. And back then he had a Sunday service where he had a
Oh yeah.
weekly broadcast, and I'd watch it, and I liked the way he presented material. I liked his no bull crap. I'll try to keep it PG. Way he talked to people, or how he approached every situation. And I said, this is like somebody that I relate to. He just came across genuine, no BS. So after about a month of watching him, I was like, you know what? I think this is something I want to get involved in. Back then, when I got in, it was September 2022. There's only 6,000 members in Sub 2. And I say only because we're up to like 16 now. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Crazy.
and then 2 months later, Pace opened up Gator. So Gator was a community that he had just started, and he opened it up and then closed it for a year. And then he's like, I'm only opening it up for a week and then I'm gonna close it again. Well, I jumped in there real quick because I didn't want to miss out on that opportunity because lending sounded like another good avenue to get into.
Mm-hmm.
And he never closed it. He left it open.
Keep it open.
So, which is fine, that's great. And now that community is up to I think 12 to 14,000.
Oh
And
wow.
so
I didn't
now
realize it was so big.
yeah, I think it's 12 actually. And so now technically I have a community of 12,000 private money lenders or people who are connected to people that have money
Mm-hmm.
to help me help others fund their deals. And then most recently I joined Top Tier TC because it's a business that I want to start with my daughter. She's looking for something to call her own. So I invested in top tier TC so we can start doing files. I'm paying somebody, you know, $1,000 plus for every transaction that I'm doing. Why shouldn't I just give that money to my daughter
Yeah.
and help her build a business and have a steady income? So
How old
um,
is your daughter?
she's 21.
21. Okay. And
So
let me ask you this, because I'm a father and I've got young kids, right? Um,
yeah.
at what point did she start getting interested in, what you're doing, and how did, I guess, how did you maybe expose her to it?
So I would say back when she was 17 is when she kind of started showing a little bit of interest because everyone in the family was like, Dad, I like what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. And then she decided she was going to go to college out of state. And then I bought a rental property close to the college that she was planning. Wasn't even accepted yet. But she was planning on going to Florida State University. So I bought a property in Tallahassee.
Hmm.
And as it got closer to the time, she was a junior at the time. And we went and bought it. I closed on it remotely. I was actually driving to Florida, stopped in New Orleans, signed the paperwork at a hotel in the lobby, did my closing there, and just kept driving to Pensacola. That we were doing a family vacation, and then the next day went up to Tallahassee to grab the keys from my agent to see the house that I never saw before, bought unseen. And she just thought that was the coolest thing to buy a house unseen,
Hmm.
but it was going to be used for um, basically a dorm because she's going to have her and three of her friends stay in the property. So again, co-living back then. And then she's like, Dad, I don't want to leave home, so I'm not going. I was like, fine. So I just converted it into a long-term rental because it's still penciled as a long-term rental.
You still
And
have it now?
nope, I sold it. Property management companies are pain in the butt, and I'm just tired of dealing with people trying to get them to do the job that I'm paying them to do.
Yeah.
So I just said, you know what, enough's enough. I basically sold everything that I had that was out of state and trying to bring it home. Started to rebuild a little bit. One of the things I did that was wrong when I first started was I was just buying properties whether I had boots on the ground or not. Now I'm a little bit wiser. And now when I buy properties, I make sure that I have somebody that I trust that is close by that can help me out in the event that there's an issue. For example, I'm
Mhm.
closing in a house in Mansfield, Texas, and my partner lives 20 minutes from the house.
Okay.
So I have boots on the ground to help me with any kind of problems that I have with the tenants, any kind of structural or, house issues that need to be taken care of. Um, that I can have peace of mind knowing that if something happens, I can get somebody there quick instead of having to rely on a property management company that's kind of like, well, we can't do it until this time. So that's kind of like where I'm at now, where I need people to be able to take action when action is needed, not when it's convenient for them.
Yeah. So basically, it's not that it couldn't have worked. So just for people that are thinking like they want to invest out of state, it's still doable. You just have to find somebody reliable to manage the property or at least be close by in case you need them.
Sure. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some great property management companies out there. It just seems like I kept finding the wrong ones,
Uh-huh.
and so I just wanted to make sure I had the opportunity to bring them closer to home. So that way, if I did need to go out there because I wasn't satisfied with the property management company, then I had that means. When I had properties up in Minnesota, it was not cost effective. There was one month I flew up there like twice, and that's because I couldn't find a handyman to fix something really simple like a doorknob.
Oh, wow.
So
That was
when
an
you
expensive doorknob.
yeah, you got to think about it. Plane
Crazy.
ticket, rent a car, go get the part, and time away from work. 'Cause I was working at W-2 at the time, so just dollar, 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 added up. I think the one trip cost me close to like I don't know, $650, and that's not including my W-2 time that I take vacation to get out there.
Yeah. So
So
would you say like, I mean, do you do you feel like it was inexperience that made you pick the wrong management company, or like do you feel like now that you've got experience and stuff like that, if you were to do it again, you'd know what to look for, or did you ask the right questions at the time and they just ended up not being the right company still?
So the first ones that I usually ask, for a referral from somebody who's doing business in that market, because usually when you get a referral, it means they're doing pretty good.
Hmm.
Um, so the referral that I got for the first property management company, they actually wouldn't take my property because it was so late in the year. They thought it would be a hard time for them to fill, so they didn't want to not provide a good service.
So they gave good accountability.
Yeah, and then I had to go looking for one, and that was a referral from my agent, and that they're the ones that um, I would say they were average property management company. And
Hmm.
what I mean by that is when I would reach out to them for with a concern, it could take them 2 to 3 days to respond. So their follow up and response time was horrible.
Yeah.
Uh, their booking system, there would be an issue in July, and then it wouldn't show up until my owner statement until like October. And I'm like, what is this charge? Oh, well, this is a service that happened back in July. I said, okay, fine. Well, why am I just seeing it now? And why
Mhm.
wasn't that charged to the tenant? So constantly having to look over my owner statement to make sure that I'm um, staying on top of them as far as accountability and accounting was concerned. It took me probably like 6 hours one day to go back 6 months and like
Yeah.
account for every dollar that they were trying to charge me for um, maintenance to find out like, does this actually truly balance or not?
Yeah.
And like that's too much. I shouldn't have to work that hard to make sure that you're not stealing money from me.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Even worse is that you have to feel like they might be stealing money from you, right?
exactly.
But I actually just had that conversation this morning with my assistant. And she was just telling me thank you for not being like a micromanager. And I told her, well, at the end of the day, I hired you to replace me. I didn't hire you so that way I can be on top of you, spending the same amount of time, making sure you're doing things the way I need you to do. Like as long as
Well,
you're doing your job right, that's all I care about,
yeah,
and kind of goes back to the same thing. Like you hired them so you didn't have to sit there for 6 hours, you know, scanning every little charge and everything. Like you might as well have just done it yourself,
exactly.
So that's crazy.
Yeah. And then so I got a new company after them, and then I told that company that the current tenants were poor payers, meaning that they would never pay on time, and then they'd always pay like throughout the whole month. So it'd be like 25, 25, 25, 25, so I wouldn't get paid in full until the end of the month.
Yeah.
The party management company that I had before would pay late fees, but they got the fees, not me. So I never even benefited
Hmm.
from them paying late. So I said, these are tenants I want out.
Yeah.
Then my new property management company is like, oh, well, we're going to try to work with them. I'm like, do you not hear me? These are not the tenants I want in my house.
Yeah, of course.
30 days goes by and they're like, oh, these are not good people to be in here. Then they have to go through the eviction process.
Well, they
So
could
that
have
takes
done that in
another
the
30
beginning.
days. And I'm like, so next thing I know, not only am I into deep in the winter time, it's going to be hard for me to fill.
Hmm.
So like, you know what? I don't even want to start this business with you. I'm done. I'm selling this property, and that's that. So that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and I said, you know what? I can't deal with these property management companies anymore. I'm just gonna cut my losses. I was really looking forward to keeping that house for a long-term hold, but it
Yeah.
just was not um, financially responsible myself to maintain that with the issues I was having with the management company.
Yeah. What's the biggest, I guess, maybe the biggest positive that you can see out of everything? Like we know the negative part of it now. Like what do you feel like you took away that was positive?
Positive. One, that I can actually invest out of state and not have a problem. When I say not have a problem, meaning that it's doable as long as I have the right systems in place. Um, Currently, like I said, I have a property in Texas now that's out of state, and I have people on the ground that help me. And so that property's working just fine. Um,
Yeah.
but that's because, again, having the right system, having the right boots on the ground support, I guess is the best way of putting it.
Mhm.
Um, as long as you have that, then I can continue to move forward investing outside of my state. Colorado is a kind of expensive property acquisition state,
Yeah.
not compared to some like California and New York, but I mean, it's up there. And, there is an old real estate rule of 1%, which you can't really do here in Colorado because of the costs of properties. So I have to find ways to invest without, breaking the bank. And um, I have to be able to invest out of state so that I can continue growing my portfolio.
Hmm. Which kind of leads into like the next phase of like what you're doing, right? Like you already talked about the transaction coordination part with your daughter and kind of explained how, that all unfolded. Um, what was it that got you into like creative investing and
I mentioned that it was hard. I was having a hard time finding the money to get in. I would get a hard money loan. They want 20% down. Well, 20% down could be 50, 60K, could be 100K in some cases.
Mhm.
And, with creative, I could get into a property with 10K out of my pocket if I structure the deal properly. So once I got into the sub two community and I understood the concepts of uh, creative financing, whether it be sub two, whether it be seller carryback, whether it be seller financing, a whole new world opened up for me. I now have the ability to take down more deals if I can structure them creatively because I don't have so much money put into the deal. If I'm putting 50K into a deal and that's all I had in my pocket, that's one deal. But if I can get into a deal for, let's say, 15, now I have the ability to get into potentially three deals for the same cost,
Mhm.
right? Um, so that's what I love about creative is it gave me better opportunities to get into deals that I couldn't get into before because I was limited on funds. Uh,
Yeah.
Another prime example is, um, some people that have low equity and they're selling their home may actually have to write a check just to sell their home. Now I'm in a position where I can help them sell their home and maybe put a little bit of money in their pocket,
Hmm.
which I couldn't do before. Why? Because of creative financing.
Yeah.
So it has really truly opened up a lot more doors and a lot more opportunities to invest, as long as I can find the right seller that's willing to accept the terms.
Of course. And that's the important part is like finding the right seller or in a lot of cases as well, finding the right realtor. Um, I was actually just putting a newsletter together for I'm doing agent outreach and talking to realtors and stuff, and that's really how I got started. Was just networking with realtors and wholesaling their deals. Um, but in the sheet, it goes over like what separates the good realtors from the bad realtors. And some of the statistics are crazy. Within the first year, about 75% of realtors, they don't make it. And then within
Right.
5 years, 87% don't make it. And um, I think the biggest misconception in real estate is, oh, you can make a lot of money and you don't have to work that hard. That's the exact opposite, right? Especially
Right.
as a realtor, maybe not as an investor. But as a realtor, there's really three types. So you have a new realtor that's just getting in. You've got like the mid-level, and then you've got the experienced realtors. And then there's also like subtypes too. So a lot of times the new realtors, they're inexperienced, they're closed-minded, they don't want to learn. So when you present a creative offer, they tell you you're a scammer or that their client's just not interested just because they don't understand it. And then you have the other realtors where they just don't know, right?
Right.
And they're the ones that are like, well, I'm not sure what the heck you're talking about, but tell me about it and let's see if it would work. And then you have the realtors that have done business before like this, but they had a bad experience, right? And
Right.
really it comes down to like those three types is the first realtor is just closed-minded, they're idiots, and that's why they just are never going to be successful in real estate. And that's why there's such a high churn. Then you have the realtors where they're open to learning, and those are the best ones to work with, as
Right.
well as the ones that had good experience. But then the last set of realtors is the ones that had a bad experience, and really it falls on them, right? Because creative investing, it's an amazing opportunity. Like you said, you're able to help people out in bad situations where they're negative equity going into foreclosures. Maybe they need a quick sale for some reason. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But the reason they had a bad experience is because they did not know what to look for and they worked with the wrong investor. Because there's bad investors just like there's bad realtors, right? So,
Right.
um, I guess kind of going over that, like, what's been your experience with talking with sellers and talking with realtors about creative investing, where you wanted to make an offer on their property, let's say like a good experiences and maybe some bad ones that you've had, just for anyone listening that might be scared to get into investing,
Right.
um like what would that look like for you on both ends?
So I'll start with the bad, because everybody always wants to start with the good. I want to end on a good note. So bad. Here in Colorado, back in February 2024, the Board of Realtor Association passed a point of emphasis that says basically if somebody tries to offer you a creative deal that is basically illegal. That's what, they didn't use that term. They're like, you have to go reach out to the bank and make sure that the bank is okay with it, or your broker will be liable for
Mhm.
a transaction.
Yeah,
Uh, all which is false.
it's not what they said, it's how they said it. They basically said it's illegal. I get it.
Right. And so every time I would submit a letter of intent on a property that was on market, I get this feedback as, you can't do this. We're not open to it. My broker doesn't want to take on the liability. So I was getting, a lot of resistance back. And I finally interviewed a real estate lawyer here in Colorado and I flat out blatantly asked him the question, is, creative financing on real estate in the state of Colorado illegal? And he's like, no. And then he's explained it how it isn't and how it has to be done legally.
Hmm.
That way I can point to that that interview or that clip, to show the agents that it's not, here's a lawyer that's telling you it's not, it's doable.
Yeah.
But it's funny because even though that emphasis was made, there are realtors in Colorado that they want to work, they want to help their clients so bad. And I say so bad, but they really truly want to help their clients out that when an offer is presented to them, they're open-minded. So we still do sub two or creative financing here in the state of Colorado. It's just there are some agents that are just really pushing it like back against it.
Hmm. Which you
Um,
can't blame them too, because if they've got their, board of realtors in that area, and then they've got their broker saying, "Hey, this is wrong."
right,
Naturally, if someone doesn't have experience with it, they're going to be, pretty, close-minded to it, and
sure,
they were conditioned for it, right?
right.
So,
So, and then a good story. Let me think of a good story. Well, I mean, the one in Texas. I had a seller who, a veteran, who was had bought another property, couldn't maintain two mortgages, had very low equity in the first house, because they had just recently purchased it. So they didn't have it, the loan hadn't really matured enough for it to have a lot of equity in there.
Mhm.
So because of creative financing and my knowledge of how to structure the deal, I was able to take over their existing mortgage. I was able to put a little money in their pocket and take that burden away from them that was, kind of weighing heavy on them. So now they can not only able to afford their new house, which they were able to do before, just had twice the expenses that they didn't want to do. Plus now they can, here in about 5 or 7 years, go buy their second home, like vacation home.
Yeah.
That because that's our terms where I will pay this one off or refinance it so that they will be able to use their um, VA benefits or entitlements to get themselves a vacation home. So I
Yeah.
save them now and will be able to provide for them, in the future when they're ready to expand again.
Oh yeah. And then like with the VA loans and stuff like that, and I know you're a, veteran, um, one of the things is they actually have multiple entitlements as well, right?
Yep.
So a lot of people think, well, oh, they only have like speak to realtors all the time, and they're like, oh, well, they already use their entitlement, and I'm like, well, maybe. Did you check to see if they use their full entitlement because they do have access to be able to use it multiple times because
Right.
they didn't use the full amount, right?
Yep. I
So
sorry.
no, you're good. Go ahead.
So yeah, that's something that was interesting is because I didn't know that even as a veteran until probably let's say 2 years ago
Oh
that
wow.
was able to I had more entitlement to purchase another home if I wanted to or not. I didn't understand that concept. Going when I was in the military, they always said once you have a VA loan, you have to either refinance to a conventional or pay it off before you
Mhm.
can use your VA entitlement again. Then I'm gonna get into the industry and actually educate myself, as you mentioned, realizing that there is a let's say top or capped amount that you can be lent to do a VA loan. So I could technically have two VA loans out at one time as long as I'm under that cap. And which was really eye-opening for me. And then, of course, trying to offer creative solutions to other veterans who may be trying to buy a second home because they're being reassigned to a different base. Really helped the people out because like I didn't know you could do that, and then I just introduced them to the lender that understands how it works and tell them how much buying power they have on the back end. And then I always offer, hey, if this doesn't work for you, I can always use our network to find a seller financed home or a sub two deal for you that you can get into as an buyer or wrap buyer at your new location.
Yeah. Which is great because the cool thing, and again, it goes back to like what you know and who you know, right? Like if you don't educate yourself, you're not able to help people. Like it kind of goes back to like those realtors that are just closed-minded. They don't want to know anything about like creative real estate. They're not helping their clients to their full potential, right? And even us as investors, the more we know, yes, it benefits us because, like, as an example, say that you talk to a realtor, they're like, hey, well, they already use their VA benefit. Well, if you didn't know about the multiple entitlements, it's like, okay, well, have a good day, right?
Yep.
But if you know what to ask for, you can say, okay, well, did they use their full benefit?
Right.
Well, what do you mean by that? Well, VA loans, you can actually get multiple loans as long as they didn't use their full entitlement. So, do you know if they use the full entitlement? Oh, well, that's a good question. So then you can open up more questions and even educate other people. Because I think as investors, kind of like going back to your problem solving mentality, right? You can be an investor and say, oh, I hate realtors because they all suck and they don't want to listen, they think we're scammers and blah, blah, blah. Or you can say, hey, I'm an investor. This is the problem for investors right now. We need to take charge and we need to educate other people in order to spread the word that this is something that actually helps people's clients, and not only that, but also being able to help other people. Like you said, like say that you find somebody, as an example, say you find someone in a foreclosure situation. You can
Right,
say, well, listen, I can't save this house for you, but are you interested in purchasing another house in the future? Yeah, okay,
right,
great. Well, in order to do that, you're going to need to save your credit, right? So, at this point right now, just as an example, you got an auction coming up in 2 weeks. You're going to lose your house, you're going to ruin your credit, and it's going to take at least 7 years before you can start looking for another house. Would you like that to happen? Or if you could at least save your credit, would that be ideal for you? Well, yeah, I'd love to save my credit. So now you're opening up the conversation of how you can present a solution to that. Now, the great thing is maybe they're in a situation where they have a really high payment on the current home, but you have other homes that you can find them that fits maybe a payment they can afford.
right.
How you can offer them another place to live and help save their credit at the same time. And not only are you going to save them from foreclosure, but you're also able to help fix their credit because those late payments, as you're making payments on time, are going to fall off.
Yeah,
So
you can also do another way too. Pace that did this, and it blew my mind, where there was a person who had fallen behind on their payments, and they had equity in their house, right? They just needed a way to kind of get back on their feet so that they could sell the house and pull the equity out. So the way Pace structured it was basically, I'm going to give you kind of like a gap loan, right? Get you caught up, allow you to get into a place where you can now access the equity in your home and make a small fee. So he basically helped somebody stay in their home, keep their credit, made a little bit of money, and the person got to keep their house. Right. So it's not always even about, you know, um, them having to move to a new place. There are also ways to structure the deal where they can stay in place as long as the deal makes sense and you can structure it where, for helping you get back on your feet, there's a little bit of, money to be made there for the investor.
now explain that a little bit because as a lender, right, when you see somebody that's in a situation where they haven't made their payments, why would you offer to catch everything up and give them a loan knowing they weren't able to pay their loan in the first place?
Depends on the situation. So
Mhm.
let's just say, for example, the person, I can't remember the full story on this one. I believe that the situation was the homeowner, um, husband had just like recently passed away, had some medical bills, um, got, um, had a job, a good paying job, just because, there was a loss of income there that just got behind. Once you got caught up, they made enough money to cover the bills. It was just that they were so far behind that they couldn't get. They were still just
I
having a hard.
think I know this one. Was this the one, the wife, she was married to a firefighter. He ran in front of a truck and tried to kill himself. He was permanently disabled. Um, she divorced him, and he wasn't making the payments on the property, but she could afford it. I think that's the one you're probably mentioning, right?
I don't remember the first part of that story you just mentioned about him getting hit and being paralyzed, but to that effect, yeah, it sounds about right.
Yeah, I think I heard that story. Pace told it not too long ago.
Right.
But she was married to the guy. He was responsible for the payments. He was a firefighter. He stopped working for like 3 months, wasn't making payments, and then he tried to kill himself by running in front of a truck. I think he told that in a No One Left Behind challenge. He told that.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy. And actually, that's a good example. Like you were saying, it's like that woman could afford the payments. It's just her husband put them in a bad situation and she was paying for it. And I think they had like three kids too, or something like that.
Yep,
Yeah.
right, same story.
Yeah. So that makes sense.
Yeah. So
How would you
again,
structure something like that? Like, let's say that you did come across a situation where it did make sense to catch up their, payments and give them like a gap loan. Um, what kind of fees would you charge somebody for something like that as a lender?
it would really depend, right? Numbers have to make sense, and you don't want to overcharge somebody who's in a bad situation. I would come up with the terms that were fair to both parties,
Yeah.
right? But also understand that I'm still an investor, that I want to make some money to help you out, but I'm not trying to break the bank either, right? Um, I think in this particular case, he charged maybe I think 15% on the money that was lent. If I remember correctly, it was something like
Hmm.
these are just from the hip. I don't remember the numbers exactly, but let's just say it was they borrowed um, 32 and got paid back 40 or something like that. You know what I mean? And
So
then,
basically, it's just situational, like whatever, like where you may charge more for somebody else, depending on the situation and how you want to help somebody. It really just comes down to how you would structure it.
yeah, because the loan in this case, I think they were paid back within 2 months, a 60-day period, right? Well, what if they needed 6 months? And you might want to charge a little bit more because now you have money that you could be using to
For other
grow,
stuff, yeah.
you know, tied up for 6 months. You may charge them a little bit more for that. What if it's, only 30 days? Well, maybe you don't charge as much because it's a quick turnover.
Hmm.
So that's why I say it really would depend on the situation on each deal because what if they um, need 12 months because of XYZ? You
Yeah,
want to make sure that you're tailoring the offer in a manner that one covers you, make sure you're secure in the funds that you're lending. Two, you make a little bit of money, but you're also helping somebody else out. Again, at the end of the day, it's about helping others, um, kind of protect their asset. I mean, it's a house and it's an asset. It's an investment for them.
hmm,
And last thing, as an investor myself, is if I have the means to help somebody, if it's even if it is just to stay in their home, my goal is not always to buy a home. It is an option, but it's not always the only option.
yeah.
Is find a way to structure it where I can still make a little bit of money, help them stay in their home, help them, protect their credit, whatever, and then be able to access the income or the equity in their home to kind of get them back on their feet, right?
Yeah.
Going back to the story, if I remember correctly, he even helped her, I think, get a car
Oh
as
wow.
part of the transaction. And that could be blending two stories into one, but it could be something as simple as that,
Either
helping.
way, if you're blending them together, it just
Yeah,
it shows that there's more people being helped, right?
sure. I mean,
So
you take a car over sub two, you basically give that car to the person that you're trying to help so that they can get to the job that they have, so that they can make the money to afford. I mean, that's the one crazy thing about creative financing is there's nothing that's off the table,
oh yeah,
right?
it works with
I'm as
everybody.
a lender say, I want to buy this car for $2,000. I'm going to give you the car as part of the transaction so that you can afford to make the payments. And then all I'm asking for is this amount of money out of the
Yeah.
equity in your home so that you can stay there and keep living your life.
Oh yeah.
I think
Well,
anybody,
everything that you're talking about, it goes with your Instagram handle. So, purpose over profits. It's
that's right.
you found your purpose and you're able to help people and, make a business around it at the same time, which at the end of the day, I think if everybody would focus on that, uh, you're gonna do so much better. And it goes down to like your core intentions is Frank Kern. He's an amazing internet marketer. He's one of the pioneers in the marketing industry, and he did a keynote speech on, having a core intention, which is basically being in alignment with what you're doing. Uh,
Right.
which is so important. But listen, Jose, we're out of time here, but it was a pleasure speaking with you, man. Is there anything that you want to leave with the audience before we go? Whether it be a message or maybe you want to do something, a project you're working on that you want to connect with, networking, whatever it may be.
Well, first I will say thanks so much for having me on, Mike. Appreciate it. For the audience, there's my QR code that way. If you want to get in touch with me, use my I believe that's my Blink card. It has every way to get a hold of me. I'm here to help. I don't mind sharing my knowledge. If you have some opportunities, please bring them my way. And as I said, I'm a transactional lender. So if you are an investor trying to get into deals and you're having a hard time finding the funding, reach out to me. Let's have a conversation. Let's see how I can problem solve for you. Can't say that I can solve everything, but I can solve most things with the relationships and resources that I have. And I'll just leave one nugget is um, this business is all about relationships. So network, network, network. You will be surprised how much you can get done by just networking with other people. And you might think that I'm an extrovert, but I'm actually an introvert. But when it comes to real estate, I come out of my shell. So those are
Like
the what's the word words of encouragement and knowledge that I'd love to share with your audience.
Awesome, man. Well, if anybody does want to reach out to him, I'm also going to be putting his social media in the links below, in the comments below. And then, as you can see on his screen there, he's got his Instagram, Jose Purpose Over Profits, joselensmoney.com, and then you've got his QR code there. So, but it was a pleasure seeing you again, man, and glad to have you on. If you guys got value out of the video here, like, comment, share, subscribe. Do everything that you do with social. And like always, leave comments below on how we could either improve these episodes, ideas for future episodes, or any comments on what you guys got value out of. All right, Jose, take care. And everybody else, I'll see you on the next one.
See ya.